And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Second and Goal with your host. I'm Alex.
And I'm Gary.
We are here in association with 365 Broadcasting, your one-stop shop for all the best new podcasts and shows. Second and Goal is going to set a new standard when it comes down to talking about football games, the teams, and the people who run those teams. When it comes down to the love of the game, the only people who can measure up to the passion are the fans. We are fans like anyone else, and we aspire to give you the best possible show. Be forewarned, though, we don't pull any punches here, so leave your feelings at the door. If you haven't done so, please feel free to go to our Facebook page and type in Second and Goal with Alex and Gary in the Facebook search engine. Like and share and give us your input. Be sure to go over to our page on Spreaker and like the following podcast: Downrange with Sarge, hosted by Big Sarge himself, and G Money, Monday and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Spreaker, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. on video. No Bones About It with G Money, Mondays and Fridays at 10 a.m. And Depth of Perspective with yours truly, Alex Kirsch, every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, hopefully everyone has enjoyed this football season, the end of the football season right here. Gary and I decided to start this because in our 365 hosts chat on Facebook, during the football season, Gary and I would have a lot of very passionate conversations, should I say, because we like to talk about football. Football is like one of our favorite things to talk about, aside from political stuff and social issues. But football is something we're all very passionate about. So then Gary and I just said, hey, why don't we just start our own football show? And last week was supposed to be our first one, but due to technical difficulties, this is going to be our first official show right here. So this is going to be the start of something great. What do you think, Gary?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it rolling last week, but now we got it rolling this week, so we're all ready to go and get this ball rolling and see how it works.
Absolutely. So, basically, a little bit of background on ourselves when it comes down to football. So, I wasn't really much of a football player growing up, as you can tell, because growing up, even throughout high school, I was like 6 foot, about 120 pounds dripping wet by the time I graduated high school. But I actually got a better understanding of football after I got out of my senior year in high school, because I went out for the football team, but I didn't do very well, as you can tell. And so I just kind of learned about the game, learned about the positions, and as the years progressed, I got better and learned more about it. At that time, my team was the Miami Dolphins, but in 2003, I changed to the Seattle Seahawks because being from Oregon, they were the closest team I had. And plus, I liked watching them play. And my first actual professional football game was in 2005, the first time the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl, and they were playing against the Giants. And this is like when Eli was just starting out. And it was we were 22 rows back from the New York Giants bench on the 50-yard line. The seats were fantastic. And it was a fun game to watch. It was truly one of the most exciting things because I really felt excited going to it. How about yourself, Gary?
Well, I grew up in Connecticut, so I kind of grew up in the New England area, but I actually grew up a Cowboys fan. And the long story short, everybody in my household was Giants fans except for my grandmother. She rooted for the Cowboys to tweak the rest of my family. When I was younger, I used to want to stick up for my grandmother, so I became a Cowboys fan. As I got older and learned about the sport, I became a huge Tony Dorsett fan and, followed him throughout his career with the Cowboys. And, I followed Cowboys all through the 80s and through their 90s success and things of that nature. I've been to a couple of games. I went to a Giants game when they played the Cowboys in Giants Stadium. I've been to a game at the new Jerry World. I did that last year. Mm-hmm. But 5 years ago, I moved to Maryland. And we live in Western Maryland. So we're kind of in a weird area. We have a ton of Steelers fans because we're very close to Pennsylvania. There's a lot of Washington Redskins fans because we're also close to D.C. But I started watching the Ravens when I moved here. Mm-hmm. And I started watching the Ravens, obviously. This was about 5-6 years. And they, were still kind of in their mode of just coming off a couple Super Bowls. Ray Lewis hadn't quite retired yet. Yeah. And they were still a pretty good team. Now, they had a down year up until 2 years ago. And now they're obviously back with Lamar Jackson and the rest of those boys. But you hear about the whole you can't switch teams or, you're fair weather and whatnot. See, in the 90s, after the 90s success that the Cowboys had, I lost touch with football for a while.
Yeah.
I just had no interest in it. The players and the way the teams are being run was a little disinteresting to me. And I really got back into it rooting for the Ravens.
Yeah.
So I consider myself a Ravens fan now.
Yeah.
I still follow the Cowboys, but the Ravens are my team. So.
There you go. Fair enough. So that's just a little bit of background on us. So basically, we're going to go ahead and get into our first topic. So last week, our first show, we were going to give our predictions for the Super Bowl, which I gave my prediction to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I said they were going to win by a score of 27-20. And Gary, what was your prediction?
I picked the 49ers 30-27.
Yep.
But I was really rooting for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I stated that in that show.
Oh, yeah. Now, and to be fair, yeah, Gary was cheering for the Chiefs because our good friend, Rob Brandt, Big Sarge, is a huge Chiefs fan. And plus, the one thing we can definitely say is we all like Patrick Mahomes. We all think he's a great football player. He's a standout guy, a great athlete, and he's really just come out just swinging because he got injured earlier in the year. But the thing was, the reason why Gary picked San Francisco is because, to be fair, they were unstoppable this year. Like, they were just plowing people over. They had a great running game. Their defense was it the second best in the NFL this last year?
Yeah, they were second ranked defense.
So, I mean, it was all very fair. And last week, Gary was making some very good points. I was like, uh-oh, I need to counter these. But, the thing is, though, we're trying to be as honest as we can when it comes down and just stick into what we know and based upon our observations. So here we go. Now we're just going to talk about the Bowl itself. First things first, congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. Absolutely. I think it was a very well-deserved. And honestly, I felt the Super Bowl as a whole, from the national anthem was well done. The game itself was well played. I love the fact that it was the two best teams truly slugging it out, which I think that's what the Super Bowl should be about. As much as I love watching Seattle blow out the Broncos, I felt that the next year when they went up against the Patriots, even though they lost, was a great game because it's the two best teams just slugging it out one after the other and just trading blows. And I loved it. I had a great time watching. The final score of it was the 49ers 20 and the Kansas City Chiefs 31. I mean, I enjoyed watching the game, honestly. The commercials were great, too. You all right?
Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I thought you were still going.
I'm still.
I mean, I enjoyed the game. I thought it was pretty well played overall game. For 3.5 quarters, my prediction looked real good. And then obviously we know what happened in the fourth quarter, but it was a well played game. I think to be honest, I think the team that won deserved to win. I think they played. They played the way they were supposed to play and the way they have been playing. So them winning the game wasn't a surprise. So, I mean, I had no issue with the game whatsoever. I thought everything about the game and then everything about the day was great. And as you know, I went down to see our friend Robert Brandt, Big Sarge, and spent the day with him and watched the game with him and his friends. And we had a blast. And it was a lot of fun.
Yep. I just enjoyed the fact of, how it truly was, a really intense game, honestly. I mean, I've been through some games that are, down to the wire and just completely suspenseful. And for a while, it just seemed like San Francisco was just going to run away with it because, there were times when Patrick Mahomes just was not clicking on all cylinders, and there were some times when the defense was just getting to him, But, before we kind of move on, I'm just going to give a few quick stats here for everybody, for those that didn't watch the game, or just a recap on those stats, all right? When it came down to the stats, Jimmy Garoppolo finished 20 for 31, had 219 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, was sacked once, had an overall quarterback rating by the end of the game of 69.2. The longest pass that he had was to Bourne for 26 yards. Patrick Mahomes finished 26 for 42 for 286 yards, 2 touchdowns, had 29 yards rushing, 1 rushing touchdown, 2 interceptions, sacked 4 times, fumbled, and recovered, and had a rating of 78.1. Longest pass was to Tyreek Hill for 44 yards. What did you think about the battle of the quarterbacks, Gary?
Well, obviously, at the end of the day, Mahomes ends up having a better overall game than Garoppolo. The 49ers aren't a huge passing team, so they weren't going to ask him to do too much anyway. And the fact that he had to try to do some extra work in the second half, I think, is what actually cost the 49ers the game. Mm-hmm. Garoppolo's going to have some work to do next year as far as cleaning up some of his issues. Mm-hmm. But no, I mean, overall, Mahomes had he had a better game than Garoppolo. but we'll talk about the Mahomes game separately here in a minute.
When it comes down to the rushing game, I'd have to say that the San Francisco 49ers had a much more superior rushing game because they had more talented running backs to go along with it. For example, Raheem Mostert ran for 12 carries, 58 yards, had 1 touchdown. Deebo Samuel had 3 carries for 53 yards, and Tevin Coleman, he had 5 carries for only 28 yards. However, Damian Williams for the Kansas City Chiefs had 12 carries, 104 yards, and had 1 touchdown, but he also had the longest rush for the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelce had 1 carry, 2 yards, and like I said before, Patrick Mahomes had 29 yards rushing and 1 rushing touchdown. But all in all, like we always talk about how the team with the best rushing game will normally win the game, right?
Yeah, I would debate that Kansas City's running game overall was actually better than the 49ers in that game, just because of the consistency that Williams ran with the entire game.
Oh, yeah.
He averaged 6 yards a carry, I believe.
Yep.
And that's one guy, as opposed to 3 guys that they have, not counting the receiver.
Yeah.
And Mostert didn't even play, I believe, until late in the second quarter.
Yep.
So I don't know, and I've yet to find out why. Yep. I did some research and couldn't find anything that said that he was in any sort of trouble with the team or whatnot. But he's their lead running back. He didn't even play in the first quarter.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No, all I was saying was like the thing that was killing me though with San Francisco is because they had a very dominant running game throughout the season, and what they were doing is they were using Deebo Samuel's just speed to get those extra yards, and that was one of the reasons I was saying that because like yards wise they had the same, like the Chiefs had more touchdowns, rushing touchdowns than the Niners, but stat wise when it came down to actual rushing yards, San Francisco like had that stat like in spades.
Well, yeah, the stats may have been in the 49ers' favor, but the running game, as far as like the momentum of the game, was all with the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. See, like the running, stats can be tricky. You could see as a team that San Francisco might have rushed for 200 yards. Mm-hmm. But it was split amongst 4 guys, and none of those runs were impact runs.
Yeah.
The Chiefs had 3 guys basically primary run the ball. Well, Kelce only had 1 rush, but it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was a big run for first down, or it was on the goal line or whatever. And you had Mahomes, who rushed for a touchdown and had 29 yards, and you had Williams, who had 104 yards rushing, but 133 total.
Yeah.
He caught a touchdown pass and ran for 1.
Yeah.
So I still think that the numbers, in a sense, and the stats are skewed.
Yeah.
I really do think Kansas City actually ran the ball better than the 49ers did.
That's a fair argument, because the thing, and like considering the fact that they were going up against the best one of the best rushing defenses in the NFL as well, I felt that San Francisco did as good a job as they can, but just like any other game, they're going to get tired after a while.
Yes, well, San Francisco hadn't given up that many yards to any one running back in almost the entire season, and they hadn't given up more than, I think it would. I mean, he had average 6 yards a carry, and that was by far their highest number that they gave up all year.
Certainly. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a 30-second break. And welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Second and Goal. Gary and I were just talking about who had the better rushing game, and Gary made a very solid point of how Kansas City overall had the best rushing game in this Super Bowl. And I'm actually inclined to agree. And I truly do think that both defenses did a good job. I know San Francisco was coming out swinging quite a bit, but it looked like coming into the second half, like especially going into the fourth quarter, Kansas City's defense just really just picked it up and just really turned it on and started putting a lot of pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo. And, we talked about last week, I talked about how the one thing that you can definitely guarantee is that with those three defensive linemen, with Terrell Suggs, Chris Jones, I already said Terrell Suggs, Frank Clark, all those guys just getting inside the mind of Jimmy Garoppolo, it ended up being that he could not complete many passes. I mean, he hardly ever threw to his best receiver, which was Kittle. I mean, Kittle pretty much did diddly squat that entire game. It's just
neither tight end did anything. Yep, neither tight end. To be honest with you.
Oh yeah.
Kelsey didn't have a great game either.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that if you asked the coach
mm-hmm.
how he would have handled not only the drive before the halftime and then getting the ball in the second half and dealing with the whole second half, I think the coach would go back and say he'd do it different.
Yeah.
See, because I think he put the nugget in his quarterback's head that he didn't trust him.
Yeah.
I don't think it had anything to do with the Chiefs' defense. I think the coach of the 49ers actually put doubt in Jimmy G's head.
It's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, only because if you look at the drive before halftime, they get the ball. They could have gotten the ball. If they call a timeout, they force Kansas City to punt, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're already, and it's a tie game at that point. There was over 2 minutes left in the half at that point. They could have used a timeout. They choose not to. Well, it was just under the 2 minute warning, but they choose not to call a timeout, and they let the clock run all the way down.
Yeah.
To where when they punt the ball, there's only about 50 something seconds left, possibly.
Yeah.
And then they run two garbage plays, like they're just going to go into halftime and say, whatever. But then on third down, he throws a bomb down the sidelines to Kittle that ends up a complete pass, but they call a bogus pass interference call.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: if he calls the timeout and saves some of that time,
yeah,
maybe they move the ball down the field differently, and that call never happens. They get 3 points or 7 points. It changes the whole momentum of the game going into the second half.
Yes, and what's funny? Here's the thing that it's kind of interesting that we're talking about like coaches, right? Because I've been watching Undisputed, and I've been watching The Herd with Colin Cowherd, and all these different sports announcers, all these different guys that are talking about who's to blame for this game, because a lot of people are going after Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh, no, it's the coach.
It's the coach, though. A lot of them were talking about how there seems to be a pattern with Kyle Shanahan holding on to the lead. Because remember, he was the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes, he's had issues with leads in fourth quarters.
And that's the thing.
And they got super conservative in that game, too.
If
you go back and look at the Atlanta Falcons game against the Patriots, they were up 28-3 at halftime, and then he literally put the guns away.
He did.
Like holstered the weapons and got really, really conservative, and it cost them the game. And in this game, I think the same thing happened. Now, don't get me wrong. They were still in the game throughout the second half, and they had chances, and Jimmy G didn't come up in those spots, so you could blame him too. But I think the way that the halftime thing was handled was bad, and I thought that he ran real conservative play calling coming out of halftime.
Yeah,
he didn't try to move the ball even a little bit. So I mean, I would blame if I was going to give like a percentage of blame. To me, it's like a 70-30 split for me. It's 70% coach, 30% Garoppolo.
I think that's because the thing is I really can't blame the defensive coordinators because I think he did as good as he could, but the fact that they only went 3 and out like twice, I think, the San Francisco 49ers the entire game. I could have been a little bit more than that, but I know at least in the second half they went 3 and out twice. But that defense, I could tell, was getting a little bit worn down at times. And because Kansas City, because Patrick Mahomes has all those weapons out there on that field, all those wide receivers, and had Damian Williams. I mean, wasn't Damian Williams a rookie, or is this like a...
No, he's been in the league for a little while. It's just like he was on the Dolphins for 3 years.
That's right, he was on the Dolphins. So, but the thing is...
But he's an undrafted free agent. He's he's not a known high name guy. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. We could analyze the game in the sense of why did the 49ers not win the game. Mm-hmm. But I think more of it is about the fact that, once again, the Chiefs did exactly what they've been doing, which was come from behind in a big spot and win a game.
Yeah.
And this one happened to be the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You could take it and break it apart all you want. The San Francisco defense obviously is going to be gassed. They spent a lot of time on the field, in the game. The 49ers got wickedly conservative from halftime on, mm-hmm. which I think cost them big time.
Yep.
The Chiefs didn't change their game plan. They pretty much ran their game plan the entire game. So I don't think the outcome was that surprising.
Yeah.
In the sense of how the game played out.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that, considering the fact that Andy Reid really had something to prove, because it's like he's been here before, because he's just stayed pedal to the metal most of the game. I think one of the funniest plays I'd seen was the one they were on the goal line and then that little fancy spin move. It's like they were talking about how
they stole it from a 1940s Rose Bowl.
Yeah. Which I thought was pretty cool, actually.
Well, listen, Andy Reid went for it on 2 4th downs in the first quarter of the game.
Yeah.
So
and they got him.
That's all you need. I'm just saying that's all you need to know about what his idea was going into this game. He was going to be there. He was there to win the game. So.
Yeah. It kind of reminds you of the New Orleans Saints when they went to their Super Bowl and they did, was it 2 straight onside kicks and they got both of them or something like?
Yeah, I mean, I think. See, I'm going to say this. I think the bigger question to this game now mm-hmm. is the MVP conversation. That's what I think we should get into.
Absolutely. We're going to go ahead and take a 3.5-minute break before we get into talking about the MVP because I think that's going to take up the rest of the show probably. So we'll be right back after 3.5 minutes. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Second and Goal once again. If you haven't done so, please hit like and hit share and subscribe. If you haven't done so, please go to all the podcasts that we have on Spreaker and on our Facebook page. So the biggest question is right here. Now, Gary and I are at kind of an impasse right here. We kind of have difference of opinion when it comes down to the discussion of who the MVP of the Super Bowl is. Gary, who do you think the MVP of the Super Bowl is?
Well, do you want to do this where I tell you and I tell you why, or you want to go back and forth with our pick and then tell, how do you want to do it?
Let's go talk about your pick and then my pick, and then we'll explain.
I personally think Damian Williams deserved the MVP.
Okay. I'm okay with Patrick Mahomes winning the MVP. All right.
I'm not saying I'm not okay with Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think he deserved it.
I think he did in a way, but since I'm gonna have you go ahead and go first. Why do you say that Damian Williams deserves the MVP right there?
All right. Well, let's first off, we already went through Damian Williams' stats for the game.
Yes.
Okay. He had 114 yards rushing.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was 29 yards receiving. He had a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown, and he had the longest run of the game, which was also the game clinching touchdown.
Yeah.
It put the game out of reach.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back through history, now understand something.
Yeah.
I went back and looked. There have only been 7 running backs in the history of the sport to win the MVP of the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
There's only been 7. We've had 54 Super Bowls. There's only been 7 running backs.
Okay.
It's been 22 years since a running back has won the MVP, and that was Terrell Davis.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go back and you look at the numbers of the running backs that won the MVP, and then compare them to the numbers of the other players that played in that game, they deserved it. Now, here's where I'm going to lay some stats on you.
Go for it. Send it.
Patrick Mahomes became the third guy. Ready? He's got the third lowest passer rating for a Super Bowl winning quarterback, not MVP, quarterback.
Yeah.
The only guys whose passer rating was lower than Patrick Mahomes in a Super Bowl where they won the game was last year with Tom Brady, whose passer rating was 71.4, and by the way, and Mahomes was 78.1 for this game.
Mm-hmm.
So Brady had a 71.4 passer rating. And Troy Aikman in 1994 had a 77.2 passer rating. So Mahomes' passer rating is the third lowest passer rating for a winning quarterback.
Okay.
Out of the 3 guys that had those low numbers in those other 2 Super Bowls, the quarterback didn't win the MVP.
Yeah.
In the Brady Super Bowl, Julian Edelman won the MVP.
Yep.
In the Troy Aikman Super Bowl, Emmitt Smith won the MVP. Now, I'm not done yet.
Yeah, go for it.
Now, understand, Damian Williams' numbers compare very significantly with all the other running backs who won the MVP.
Yeah.
Very similar rushing numbers. Touchdown-wise, he had 2. And it doesn't matter if both were rushing. He had 2 touchdowns, didn't fumble the ball, had a huge play, also had a big play on the goal line with that catch that ended up surviving the review. Now, listen, I'm going to lay some analytics on you.
Okay.
According to data from True Media, Williams had the highest expected added total of the game. Now, what this means is expected points added is the number of points above or below the expectation after taking into account the down distance and field position on each play.
Mm-hmm.
He had the highest rating in the game by a long shot. His rating was 9.3. The next guy on the list was Sammy Watkins at 6.9.
Yeah.
Now, in comparison, when Julian Edelman won his MVP, Edelman's plus rating for that Super Bowl was 8.8. Okay? So Williams' plus rating was a whole point, almost a whole point higher than Julian Edelman, who won an MVP.
Yeah.
Okay? And I still say, now I'm going to lay off the stats here for a minute because those were the ones I wanted to bring to the table.
Yeah, go for it.
I am also going to state what is my theory on why he didn't win the MVP.
Okay.
He didn't win the MVP for me for two major reasons. That's my theory. It's my opinion, however you want to put it.
Sure.
Number one, he's not even the second most popular guy on the team. Okay? He's not on the list.
Yeah.
Meaning Patrick Mahomes is the face of the franchise. Travis Kelce is probably the second most popular player on the team. And then Tyreek Hill and so on and so on and so on.
Sure, sure.
You'd have to go way down the list before you get to Damian Williams.
Sure.
Secondly, as I've stated, they haven't had a running back be the MVP of the Super Bowl in 22 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And thirdly, he is not a known guy.
Yeah.
And everybody who's analyzed this discussion, the first thing they talk about is that Patrick Mahomes is the face of the Chiefs. And it can also be argued that he is the face of football right now.
Okay.
And I said this to you in our chat.
Mm-hmm.
When it came down to the speaking tours and all of that stuff, who are they going to want? Are they going to want Patrick Mahomes? Or are they going to want Damian Williams? That's my theory. Now, as far as the numbers are concerned, the numbers are clearly state he had a valid reason to be considered for the MVP. And he didn't get one vote from the writers. Not one. So there were 16 I think 18 voters there. They all voted for Mahomes. Mm-hmm. So he didn't even get one vote. And I think that isn't right. Mm-hmm. I think my point is this: if you're going to argue that Mahomes should have won the MVP, go ahead. Mm-hmm. But he didn't even get consideration.
I think he at least should have gotten some consideration, honestly, because he did have good numbers. He did have a really good game, honestly.
Well, Patrick Mahomes had a terrible game by his standards. Self-admitted terrible game.
Yeah.
Said it after the game.
Yeah.
But, and now you go ahead and give your argument, which I already know what it's going to be, but go ahead.
Oh, you know what my argument's going to be? Okay.
No, go ahead.
All right.
I'm just teasing.
No, I got you. Okay. So here's the reason why I say Patrick Mahomes did. Yes, Patrick Mahomes did not have a great game, but look at who he was playing against, right? We always talk about, like, the better defense always wins the game, right? I mean, look who you had back in the secondary. You had Ward. You had Richard Sherman. They had a great linebacker core. They had the overall, like, what they were called, like, the new fearsome foursome of the San Francisco 49ers defensive line that know how to get inside the head of a quarterback. He was sacked 2 times, had 2 interceptions, down 20-10. Right?
Okay.
Those are really, that's an uphill battle that you really got to come back and fight.
Right.
And throughout the entire postseason, right, he's always had to play from behind, and they've always come out and won by double digits, right? And it's not just because of Patrick Mahomes. It's because of all the weapons that he actually had. Mahomes connected with 7 of his receivers. Garoppolo connected with 8. However, he used every last one of those weapons to get down that field. He used Tyreek Hill. He used Sammy Watkins. He used Williams. Williams was able to get the passing touchdown from him, and little on the fact, he was the one that was also helping call the plays on the field. Now, the thing is, people can make the argument, Damian Williams, because he ran it and he just was gutting out the entire game. He scored 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 passing touchdown, right? Here's the reason why I say Patrick Mahomes deserved it. Because he was under a lot of pressure.
The whole team was, though.
The whole team was, though. But he made it happen. He made those passes happen. He can't
make any of that happen without actually, and I could make an argument that there's one other guy that could have and should have gotten consideration for the MVP, and that's Jones, the defensive lineman.
Chris Jones, who totally
changed the game in the second half on, I believe it was almost consecutive plays on a key crucial drive for the 49ers where he batted down 3 balls and just totally, ruined their whole, my point is this. You could listen. You could say why. Here's the thing: the stats don't lie. Okay, statistically speaking, Mahomes did not in any way, shape, or form deserve to win the MVP. Statistically speaking, he didn't deserve it. Every other quarterback, I just stated, the other 2 quarterbacks who had this bad of numbers in the Super Bowl didn't win the MVP.
Yeah.
Now the argument can be made that the other 2 guys, Julian Edelman and Emmitt Smith, had monster games.
They had monster games.
Okay.
But who did Tom Brady? Edelman was his number 1 receiver that entire Super Bowl.
Well, no. Edelman had a huge game, and he had a big crazy catch in that game where he caught the ball off his shoe tops or whatever.
Yeah.
And Emmitt Smith was an absolute fiend
Yeah.
in that Super Bowl. That was the Super Bowl where he, that was against Buffalo the second time where they came out at halftime and he ran the ball. They ran the ball 7 times in a row and he had 69 yards and a touchdown on one drive in the second half.
Yeah.
But here's the problem in the sense of why I don't think Patrick Mahomes deserved the MVP.
Okay.
He hadn't thrown two interceptions in a game since he played the Rams earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Okay. He hasn't. That was his second lowest passer rating of his career.
Yeah.
Okay. It happened on the biggest stage in the world.
Yeah.
Damian Williams, who was an undrafted free agent, who was wallowing in obscurity in Miami, ends up on the Chiefs. Doesn't have anything going for him the entire year. They have Shady McCoy and all these other guys they're testing out, and he barely gets any run. In the past, since this playoff started, he becomes their go-to guy. He's had 3 good games, and then he lights it up in the Super Bowl.
And do you think that there's a reason why he lit it up in the Super Bowl, though?
Well, you brought up the fact that that Mahomes was going up against the second-rated defense in the league.
Yeah.
So was Damian Williams.
Yeah.
So was Damian Williams.
Yeah.
I also told you when we did the show that didn't record, I told you that the 49ers were going to play coverage. And they were going to basically say, run the ball. We dare you.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's what they did. And what happened? Damian Williams gashed them for 6 yards a carry. And listen, Mahomes wasn't having a good game for 3.5 quarters. So it's not like Mahomes opened up the running game for Damian Williams because he was chucking the ball all over the field and that, and they had it. That's not what happened. What happened is Damian Williams carried the Chiefs through 3 quarters. It kept them in the game.
But here's my whole entire point, though, right? They said that they were daring him to run the goal, but what were they doing the entire game of keeping Mahomes off balance, right? Again, they sacked him 4 times, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles, right? Or 1 fumble on Mahomes and 1 fumble on their running back.
What's that have to do with the running game?
Well, here's what I'm explaining, though, is that they were the defense's entire focus wasn't Williams, though. Their focus was Patrick Mahomes.
But they had 4 guys. They had 4 guys there to stop the run, and they couldn't do it.
They couldn't.
They have the best defensive line in football.
Yeah.
And they couldn't stop this kid.
But but here's my entire point, though, is the thing is like they're down 20-10 in the 4th quarter, right? They came back
and they still ran the ball.
They ran it, but they also tossed it. They were tossing that ball all over the place.
Patrick Mahomes did not have a big yardage game, dude. You just said his numbers, and up until the 4th quarter, he actually had under 200 yards passing until the 4th quarter started.
Yeah.
So the majority of his excess yards that he had were in the 4th quarter. But Damian Williams also had a 30-some-odd yard run in the 4th quarter to clinch the game, and almost scored a second touchdown on that play at the goal line that you were talking about.
Yep.
And he caught a ball, a swing pass for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, though, you could argue it either way.
Yeah.
Mahomes has to do what Mahomes does for them to stay in the game. Yes. Without Damian Williams, though, they're nowhere. They're nowhere.
Yep. True.
You take Damian Williams' game away. If you take his rushes and his yards away, they have nobody running the ball.
The
49ers would have literally played 2 deep zone the entire game.
But last week during the show you recorded, they said if you take away Travis Kelce, you're taking away.
And
the
they
Chiefs.
did. But they did take away Travis Kelce, and look at the struggle Mahomes had up until the 4th quarter.
Yeah, but they still
Mahomes couldn't do anything until the 4th quarter, dude.
Well,
they did take Kelce away. Kelce had like 3 catches the whole game.
Yeah, for like it was 12 yards, I think.
Yeah, he had no yards.
It was like 20 yards, something like that.
Yeah, but still, he had nothing. He didn't do anything. They did take and up until it was only 2. Now, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They were 2 huge plays.
Yeah.
He hit one to Tyreek Hill, and he hit one to Sammy Watkins.
Yep.
But throughout the game, it's not like Patrick Mahomes was going downtown, lighting up the 49ers, you know, which opened up running lanes for Damian Williams, dude. He didn't have a lot of yards throughout the game. Damian Williams did that all on his own. Him and the offensive line is who did that.
Yep.
I'm saying you give the offensive line all the credit in the world. Oh, and by the way, it is a known fact because Mostert, the guy from the 49ers, who, by the way, they traded uniforms and now they're going to trade him back because Damian Williams wants his jersey back because it's going to be worth a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
But Mostert said not only that, Damian Williams called the touchdown. He called it coming out of the huddle. Loud enough for 49ers to hear it.
Oh, he did?
He called his shot. Yep, he called his shot and scored that touchdown. Listen, we could go back and forth all day on this.
Yeah.
I think we should solve it this way. Everybody is going to have their opinion on who the MVP should be. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there are arguments to be made that Patrick Mahomes deserves it. You know, he did a lot in the fourth quarter to bring them back. I just personally think if you look at it from a statistical standpoint and the fact that without this kid, they're nowhere.
Yeah.
I think he deserved the MVP. And if not, he deserved a hell of a lot of consideration.
Absolutely.
And he got none.
Well, the thing is, like, I don't think it should have been unanimous. I think he definitely should have gotten some recognition. Definitely.
And he got none.
And he got none. I think he was definitely cheated in that regard. You know, it's just.
And you could have and like I said, you could have gave argument that Chris Jones could have had at least a vote or two.
He could have had a vote or two as well. You know,
he had a sack in the game and 3 batted balls.
Yep. Yeah, it was.
He had a J.J. Watt game.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I'm serious. J.J. Watt game.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, you know, the thing is, like, I don't think J.J. Watt's ever gonna get his ring because, like, he can't stay healthy. You know. Yeah, but all in all, like, the argument can be, and you've made some really solid arguments, and you know, it's swinging me a little bit more towards Damian Williams just because he put the team on his back. But it's just like I still think without Patrick Mahomes, they won the games. So
no. I think that's obvious. Without Patrick Mahomes, they don't win.
Yeah.
But listen to me, I think if you asked everybody on the Chiefs, I really believe this. I think if you went and asked the people who play on the Chiefs, they'd all tell you Damian Williams was the MVP. I believe they would. I think Patrick Mahomes would tell you that.
You know, that'd be very fair. You know, that honestly, I'm pretty sure they would say that anyway, just because like they're a team, they're a cohesive team.
Yeah, but I still think they believe it though. Even though they're a great family kind of team, I think the Chiefs know that kid was the MVP of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because nobody, like I said, nobody expected him to do anything, dude.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, like, remember last week when we were talking about like they really didn't have much of a running game. I was like, well, who's their running game? But now they got now I think everyone's gonna be.
Well, he's established himself.
Oh yeah.
Going forward as their running back.
Oh yeah. You know he's probably going to get a big fat contract after this. Probably.
Even if he doesn't get a big fat, well, I don't know what his status is now, but the point is he's going to be their starting running back next year.
Yeah, LaShawn McCoy, forget about it.
Oh, well, they already pretty much got rid of him.
Oh, they did? I thought he was still.
Well, they didn't officially got rid of him, but they deactivated him for the Super Bowl. So I highly doubt he's going to come back.
Did you hear when I mentioned to Sarge how Kareem Hunt doesn't have a Super Bowl ring because he went to the Browns?
No, I know.
Yeah.
No, I know.
I thought that was hilarious. So. But yeah, all in all, I mean, the case should definitely be made, and they should definitely kind of take a look at it a little bit more. And I think like the last time I'd actually seen a player that was essentially unknown that got a MVP was it was Malcolm Smith from the Seattle Seahawks. Like I didn't know Malcolm Smith all that well because I think he line. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying you mentioned him. Mm-hmm. And I went back and looked. Now, you got to understand, Malcolm Smith, Larry Brown for the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. What was the other guy from the Saints? Did they give him that MVP that year? The guy that had the pick six. Did he get the MVP that year?
I thought it was Drew Brees that got the MVP that year.
He might have. But I'm saying, with some unknown, Larry Brown, the guy you mentioned, they had huge plays.
Oh, yeah.
Like that clinched, clinching plays.
Game changers.
And that's the other argument that could be made for Damian Williams is he had the clinching touchdown. It clinched the game. It put the game away. Just like that pick put the game away that guy had and the guy from the Cowboys, Larry Brown, he had 2 interceptions in that Super Bowl.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah, there's not a lot of no-name guys that win MVP. There's only a couple of them.
Yeah.
So, I still say that could be a reason why he didn't win it, because he's not a known guy.
I actually,
And he would have had to have a monster game. Like, that's the thing. That was my argument. For him to actually get the MVP over Mahomes, he would have had to have a massive game.
Yeah.
He would have had to have like 200 yards or 150 yards and, another 50 catch. He would have had to have one of those games for him for him to overtake Mahomes.
Certainly.
I still think he deserved it, though.
Yeah. Oh, no, completely fair. Because, I remember talking about somebody that I felt that did deserve, a MVP, honestly, was when, Seattle, New England faced off. Like, Malcolm Butler, he was the one that sealed the game for New England. I mean, granted, it was a really bad call, declared the worst call in football history, as everybody remarks it. But the thing is, though, he sealed the deal for New England. He sealed that game.
Yeah,
he actually had a good
but Tom Brady had a massive statistical game in that Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a back and forth essentially between the two. I mean,
yeah, but I think he had big numbers, if I'm not mistaken.
You're gonna Google it?
I'm gonna just double check. I'm pretty sure he had a real big game. Here it is. What year was that? That was the year they played Seattle, right?
2014. Or 2015, I'm sorry. 2015 Super Bowl. Because it was that year I left for Georgia. So
I'm pulling it up now. It's going to take a minute.
No worries.
But no, I mean, I think there is like I said, there's an argument to be made for both guys, but I think history-wise, it seemed to me that this kid deserved it. Where are we at? Tom Brady. That was what number was that?
49.
49. He was 37 of 50 for 328 yards and 4 touchdowns, dude. So, yeah, the interception was big, but Tom Brady had a massive game.
Massive game.
It's statistically, it's a massive game. Yep. So, 4 touchdowns. There's only been one or two guys that have more than that in the Super Bowl.
I think
so.
Well, I think it's like what was it? Joe Montana, Tom Brady, and who
Steve
else?
Young and Steve Young. Steve Young had 6. Other guys have had 4. Doug Williams had 4.
Oh man.
Steve Young had 6. Tom Brady had 4. Actually, there's not that many.
Yeah.
Troy Aikman had 4 in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I knew Troy Aikman was in there at least somewhere.
So there's only 3 or 4 guys that have been at 4 or more. Terry Bradshaw also had 4.
Definitely Terry Bradshaw. So.
Well, but like I said, if you looked at the numbers, just let me give you a comparison here. We'll go back to when Emmitt Smith actually won his MVP. Because like I said, the last running back to win an MVP was Terrell Davis.
Yeah.
But Terrell Davis had 3 touchdowns in that game and 157 yards.
That was against the Falcons, wasn't it? Or was that against the Packers?
I don't remember. It was Super Bowl 32. Super Bowl 32. Yep. Doesn't say who they played. Yeah. You go back to like Emmitt Smith.
It was probably against the Packers because the second year was when John Elway got the MVP. Yeah. That was playing the Falcons, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Emmitt Smith, 30 carries, 132 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Otis Anderson. Now that Super Bowl is a little skewed. That's considered to be one of the best played Super Bowls in the history of sport. Between the Giants and Buffalo.
Oh, okay.
The Giants and Buffalo, where there was no turnovers. That was the game that the Giants went on like a 13-minute drive to start the second half and basically kept the ball the whole quarter. And Otis Anderson only had 102 yards rushing in that game and only 1 touchdown. But the reason he got the MVP was because there was only 1 touchdown scored in the game.
Yeah.
And he scored it on a drive that lasted 13 minutes. It took up an entire quarter, basically. So that's why he won the MVP. the other running backs, you have to go way back. John Riggins and Marcus Allen, they won it in back-to-back years. Marcus Allen had almost 200 yards rushing that year. John Riggins had 166 yards. So my point, all I'm trying to say is that his numbers are comparable to other running backs that have won the MVP. And his quarterback didn't have a big game. So there could be an argument made that he should have won it. But you know what? Patrick Mahomes, good for him. You know, there's nothing wrong with him in winning the MVP. It's good for the league. You have to say that much.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're all in agreement, though, that when it comes down to the game itself, it was a very well-played game, and I felt everybody had a chance to kind of just chip in and win it. And, you know, coming down to it, like, I do think that both sides probably they say that they left everything on the field, but that there was a lot that could have been, you know, like a couple plays, like one pass that you could have made.
Well, there's always
stuff like that. So.
There's always going to be a play here or there that you go back and go, damn, we had a shot there and we didn't make. I mean, the coach even said it after the game. Shanahan said, you know, we had some chances in the second half and we didn't take advantage of them. There were a couple bad calls in the game. I mean, the officiating wasn't great. There were a few bad calls. That offensive pass interference call before halftime was atrocious.
Because people made the argument that Kyle Rudolph.
Oh, it was atrocious. They were hand checking each other. To me, it was a no call. You just don't call it. There was an offsides in the second half. They didn't call on a play. That the Chiefs were offsides, they didn't call that. The delay of game on the last play of the game, well, what amounted to the last play of the game when there should have been a delay game penalty on that play, and they didn't call it. That play should have been blown dead. They should have got a 5-yard penalty and it would have had to run the play again. Not saying anything would have been different, but the point was it was a delay of game penalty and they didn't call it. You know, so I didn't think the officiating was great, but overall, outside of the bad officiating, I thought the game was well played.
Absolutely. I was actually watching Colin Cowherd, and one of the things he was talking about how if there's anything he would like to change, like rule-wise for next season, is officiate like they did in the playoffs. Let the guys play. There were far too many. Was that?
No, go ahead. I was just going to say they have to change the pass interference that calls. They have to.
They do, because there was a lot of blown calls this year as far as like pass interference, kind of like they did between the Saints and the Rams. But the thing is, though, is there are times when you have to let players play. Like, for example, a lot of the holding calls, Colin Cowherd, and I agree with him on this, unless it deliberately has to impact the game. Like, for example, if an offensive lineman holds somebody and prevents them from making a play, then yes.
the rule should be if it directly impacts the play itself, then it should be called. Like, I don't see why you would call a illegal contact penalty or a hold on an outside receiver on the left side of the field when the play was a run to the right. You know, it's 50 yards away from the penalty.
Yeah.
Why do you call it? It's pointless. It doesn't affect the play. You understand? Now, I understand it's a rule and you're supposed to call it, but there's plenty of times where officials swallow their whistle, you know, in a circumstance where they don't need, you know, I personally don't like when officials decide games.
Yes.
I understand it's part of the game and human error is also part of the game, but I also don't here's the thing. You could review offensive pass interference, but it never gets overturned.
Yep.
Ever. They've only overturned, I think it was 5 of them this year.
Yep.
So here's the thing. Why review it then? Yeah. If you're never going to overturn it, then why review it? Just keep it the way it was, where it gets called on the field. There is no review. You know, get over it. Yeah. And you have discussions about it with your friends that it was a bullshit call or it wasn't. I mean, you do what you do.
Oh, of course.
But, you know, I personally think, I really do. I think that the NFL should take the college football's review system.
Yeah.
And they should review everything the way the college football reviews it, which is they review every scoring play, which I think they do in football and NFL already.
They do.
Every scoring touchdown gets reviewed. I personally think helmet-to-helmet hits should be reviewed in the pros.
Yes.
That they shouldn't get ejected like they do in college, because I don't even agree with the ejection in college. I don't.
Because there are times there are times when it's not even deliberate.
I don't agree with them getting ejected on the first one. You understand? Like,
Yeah.
when you could see it was an accident and they eject them anyway. I think there should be you get one type of, like in the pros, if you get 2 misconduct penalties, you're out.
Yeah.
Like unsportsmanlike. So I think it could be something like that in college, where if you get 2 of those penalties, then you're gone. But in college, the way it is the replay booth has the ability to call for a replay, not the coaches. So the point is, if the replay booth doesn't buzz down to the officials, it doesn't get reviewed.
Yep.
So I personally think that that's how they should run the pro replay system, is that they should take it out of the coaches' hands, because the coaches will even tell you, we don't know what we're supposed to challenge and what we're not.
Yeah.
Because the ones they do challenge never get overturned. The ones they don't challenge are the ones that they should have challenged and they would have gotten overturned. So they don't even know what to challenge.
Yeah, kind of like New England Patriots fans were complaining when Kansas City came to town, where there was a deliberate, like, because they had wasted all their challenges, they couldn't challenge that because I think it was in 2 minutes. So that was a very sound argument for people to make.
Well, within the last 2 minutes of a game in the pros, though, the challenge is supposed to come from the replay booth.
Yeah, but they didn't.
And that's the thing. Then they don't review it, and then people are screaming, well, they didn't review it anyway.
Yeah.
But that's my point. Mm-hmm. At least if it's from the booth the whole game, well, then that's what you know it's going to happen. Sometimes they're not going to review because they don't think it was a reviewable play.
Yeah.
So
when it comes down to it, like, and then we'll kind of go into our last bits here.
Yeah.
When it comes down to the helmet, the only time I think that you should be ejected if it is egregious.
Oh, it's got to be egregious. Yeah.
Like if it's like a Vontez perfect play, absolutely eject that guy.
I agree.
Get him out of here.
No, I agree with you on that. I agree that if it's obvious and blatant, yes. Mm-hmm. But if it's in a bang, moment of the game where the guy that, their helmets happen to bang together, I don't see how you could call that. Yeah. Not in college or the pros.
Yep. I couldn't agree more in regards to that. So anyway, we're going to go into the what we'll call like the 2-minute warning right here. Gary, go ahead and give your last 2 minutes, and then I'll give my bits then.
Well, I would just like to say that I think that overall the Super Bowl was a really well played game. I think it was exciting. I think we got what we wanted out of the Super Bowl. It wasn't boring. It wasn't a blowout. It wasn't a boring one like the Rams and the Patriots, where it was like 13-9, and it was a snooze fest. So I think we got what we wanted. Like I said, the argument could be made whether or not Patrick Mahomes deserved the MVP, but I'm good with it either way. I congratulate the Kansas City Chiefs for a very good year, and I am looking forward to next football season.
Absolutely. I agree. I thought this was an exciting Super Bowl. Last year, the Rams didn't even score a touchdown. Like, they didn't come with it whatsoever, but I think it's just because they were so exposed. But it's just, again, I like a Super Bowl where the 2 best teams are slugging it out the entire time. I mean, there's some games where, like, the team starts off really heavy, but then backs off. Keyword, the Atlanta Falcons. And, it could be said that the 49ers backed off quite a bit too. But the thing is, they still brought it as best as they could. And I just think that a lot of it definitely had to do with the coaching. And I think this is going to be a really important lesson for Kyle Shanahan next year. Hopefully he doesn't learn too much, because I want Seattle to come back and just kick the hell out of him. But the thing is, like, on the real, I think that team has got a bright future. There's a lot of experts out there that say that San Francisco is going to be the nightmarish team next year. And they also say Baltimore is going to be the nightmarish team next year because Lamar Jackson is going to have a real big chip on his shoulder for what happened at the end of the season. And I think those are all very fair points. But, the thing is, folks, throughout all these episodes, we're not just going to talk about what happens during the season. We're also going to talk about what happens in the offseason. But we're even going to talk about how we felt about certain teams throughout the year. We're going to pick one team from the NFC, one team from the AFC, and give our assessments from there. So, long story short, this was been our first official episode for Second and Goal. Hopefully everybody enjoyed themselves. Gary, did you have any fun with this one?
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to the rest of them.
Yep.
Can't wait.
Absolutely. I can't wait either. So anyway, hope you all have a good evening and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. We're out.
Peace. We're out.